Hello everybody out there. My name is Dieter Truxius and I look back on a long management career as a CFO in industrial companies. You will find more information regarding my CV in my comment below. In this video, I want to offer you some basic information on non-financial indicators for corporate performance. This is not an academic lecture addressed to business school students, but to everybody interested in the actual controversial discussions about the right way towards a more sustainable economy. I will express my personal views here based on my industrial experience. If you should also be interested in the classical toolbox of financial key performance indicators, or KPIs, you will find links to my recently published financial YouTube videos also in my comment below. Let's get started. It is fair to say that the non-financial performance measurement of economic activities has become one of the most important topics in actual political debates and legislation. Not only but mainly driven by the massive threats of the global climate change. Therefore, corporate management is confronted with new challenges, closely monitored by a more and more critical general public. Especially the European Union is pushing its legislation heavily to enforce political desired changes in corporate activities, to reach the goals of the European Green Deal. This has recently, among others, resulted in extended reporting obligations on non-financial issues for large public companies in Europe. And there are plans to include also large private companies in the near future, and to some extent even small and medium-sized enterprises. On top of the new reporting obligations, there are targets for the relevant non-financial indicators, such as greenhouse gas emissions, energy consumption, waste management, etc., defined and imposed on the corporate world by the political authorities. If such targets are not reached, legal consequences may take place. These strong political ambitions in most of the developed and market-oriented economies will lead to substantial changes for corporate management. There will be considerably less freedom in the future to define financial and non-financial strategies, goals and targets and actions. However, the call for a revision to more sustainable corporate activities, together with more transparency towards all stakeholders and not only the shareholders and the general public, is increasingly accepted by top management in the United States and in Europe. This is enhanced by a new trend in the mindsets of equity and debt investors, who increasingly demand more sustainable or green investment opportunities. Now I'm back to my home office because the wind outside was blowing too loud into the microphone. Let's get on. The intensity of discussions on non-financial targets and disclosure requirements gained speed about 10 years ago, and it soon became a Babylonian confusion, as many organizations of all political colors and backgrounds came up with proposals that could not be consolidated easily. In the meantime, we have entered a trial and error phase in Europe, where the large public companies have become the test animals of the practicability of new EU legislation. Up to now, almost everybody seems to be quite unhappy with the design and results of the first mandatory sustainability reports for the years 2018 and 19, which may be either published as a separate report or integrated into the annual report. The relevant EU legislation is now under revision. That being said, it seems obvious that the actual state-of-the-art of non-financial performance indicators is not yet standing on the same solid ground as in the case of financial reporting, where we have well-established key performance indicators, KPIs, in a hierarchical pyramid structure. These KPI pyramids normally have a return on financial capital on top of that pyramid. Nevertheless, let us play the cards we've got and collect the already available key elements of a future non-financial KPI pyramid that can be useful not only for external reporting to the stakeholders, but would ideally serve also as a decision support tool inside industrial companies and similar organizations for their internal process management and control. At least there is already a broad consent about 3 clusters of non-financial performance indicators that should be essential parts of a non-financial KPI system. These are indicators on greenhouse gas emissions, renewable energies to replace fossil and nuclear sources, and water use and waste management. We could view these 3 indicator areas as the core building blocks of a non-financial KPI pyramid, which is actually by far not complete, nor do we already have one top non-financial KPI as shown in the picture on the screen. Additionally, we need to measure and manage the consumption of non-renewable and critically limited natural resources. That is land as such, and its resources like rainforests, metal ores, oil and gas. Historically, this was the first area of concern about the non-financial impacts of economic activities, at least since the publications of the Club of Rome about the limits to growth, already 50 years ago. But a closer look at this additional building block would be beyond the time limits of this video. And only for time reasons, I must also omit a detailed look at the new link between non-financial and financial instruments, the so-called green bonds, or more broadly defined, the rapidly emerging new instruments of sustainable finance. Please let me know in the comments if you would be interested in a separate video on these issues. Among the 3 core building blocks for non-financial KPIs that I will discuss here, the focus will be on greenhouse gas emissions. Because up to now this is the blind spot in many economic decisions. Because these emissions, measured in CO2 equivalents, have been more or less for free. They don't have a price tag yet. In the past, the EU has granted most of the existing emission certificates for a price of 0 and in larger quantities than needed by the industry. However, meanwhile public auctions at low price levels have started, and there is new national and international legislation underway to establish a CO2 price system, or alternatively a CO2 tax, in the near future. Until now, these plans unfortunately do not seem to be sufficiently coordinated and will probably cause conflicts and confusion. Other than the greenhouse gas emissions, the 2 other core building blocks of non-financial KPIs, energy consumption and water and waste management are already recorded at costs, at market or political prices, and are therefore already integrated to some extent in corporate decision-making and existing financial KPI systems. But of course, their price-building mechanisms may very well be discussed and changed in the future if this seems useful for a better incorporation of sustainability issues. This might then have a substantial impact on corporate and private decision-making. For your convenience, I have split this video in two parts. This is the end of part 1, which was supposed to cover basic information on non-financial performance measurement. In part 2, I will start with analyzing some examples of actual sustainability reports of large public companies in Europe and demonstrate the shortcomings of such reports. As a consequence, I will then propose a new non-financial key performance indicator, KPI, that turns greenhouse gas emissions into a cost factor. This could, in my view, improve corporate decision-making towards more sustainability orientation. Thank you for now, and I hope you will be back for the second part of this video.